Good evening. Yeah, today we'll go ahead and start. Go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag, state of New Mexico, to be a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Roll call, please.
Priscilla Manuelito.
Present.
Kevin Mitchell.
Here.
Lynn Heineman.
Here.
Sandra Jeff. Joe Manini.
Thank you. Again, good evening, board members, administration, and also everybody sitting out there. We appreciate you all coming today. We'll go ahead and move to 2 on the agenda, approval of agenda.
Madam President, I wanted to ask that one item be moved up after the approval of the agenda, and that is the student recognition. So those students that are here, that presentation can be done so they can get back home because they have school tomorrow.
Thank you. Mr. Hyatt? That would probably go right before public comment.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Hinneman?
I'd like to request also that item 8, item 8L be moved up to be combined with 7B on the school climate survey. It turns out that there's some information I think that links those two together. One can follow the other, just overlap, but I think they're still separate items. There we go. Thank you.
Can you
I think
repeat?
they're separate action items potentially, but there's some of the information is going to overlap.
Can you repeat that one more time, Mr. Hinneman?
Okay, thank you. Moving item 8L, superintendent position, next step, up to be, let's say, immediately following 7B, even though that's old business, because the information that I have overlaps those two items.
Okay. Okay.
Madam President, also, I haven't had a chance to look to see where it is, but there is an item on a report on tribal clothing program from the Navajo Nation. 1D. We'd like to remove that from the agenda. Mr. Wallace, Mr. Chris Wallace, was not able to attend this evening, but he will work to attend on the next scheduled board meeting in February.
Okay.
Madam President, with anything else, I'd like to move the agenda be approved as changed.
Thank you, Mr. Ranini, for that motion. Roll call, please.
Miss Jeff.
Yes.
Mr. Heineman.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Miss Manuelito.
Yes.
Madam President, for the recognition this evening, we'd like to turn the time over to a principal of David Skeet Elementary, Mr. Wade Bell, to do the recognition for this evening.
Board President and board members, again, these are recognitions for our 3 students from the spelling bee competition, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much, Terry. We had our district spelling bee, and it's also McKinley County spelling bee last Tuesday, the 10th of January, and we had 3 students win. I'm very proud to say two of the students are from Gallup Mid School, and 1 student is from Chief Manuelito Mid School. It's the first time a mid-schooler's won in years. If you've ever seen the spelling list words, I know, Priscilla, you have, they're hard. And so there's going to be one little girl I'm going to have help me, Sheena. She's going to have to help me with her word because I still can't pronounce it. So just so you know, being the sponsor of this event does not mean I can spell worth a darn. It's just getting it all organized. So our 3rd place winner, which I'm very proud of, is Sam Aish from Chief Manuelito Mid School. Come on up, Sam Aish. She's sitting with her father, Ali Aish, who I went to Gallup High School, and we graduated in 1993 together. So we know that. Our 2nd place winner, this is her 4th time winning either 1st or 2nd and participating in the state spelling bee. Deshina Thompson, originally from Twin Lakes. She won twice at Twin Lakes, once from Uplift and once from and this year from Gallup Mid. Deshina Thompson. Deshina, what was your word? Ebullience. Ebullience. E-B-U-L-L-I-E-N-C-E. I don't even know what it means. And I'm not going to. And our 1st place winner, she won with the word Cotswold, and her word by herself was Walla, was Kaya Tempest. This is Kaya's 3rd time pricked. She's won 2nd place 1 time and 1st place twice, and this will be her 3rd time also participating in the spelling bee at the state level. So Kaya and Tashina will be participating in March at the state spelling bee at Sandia Prep. And so if they win there, they go to Washington, D.C. They get a free all-expense-paid trip with 1 adult to Washington, D.C. And the highest, I believe, last year, they both came in the top 7 out of the state with their 60 representatives. So I'm sure they're gonna make Gallup McKinley County proud. So one more big round of applause for them.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and that'll conclude the recognitions for tonight. Thank you.
I don't have no public comment in front of me, so
I don't have any either.
none, Joan?
None.
Okay. Yeah. Number 3, we have approval of minutes, January 3rd, 2017.
Madam President, motion to approve the minutes for the January 3rd meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, please.
Mr. Manini,
Yes?
Ms. Jeff,
Abstain.
Mr. Heineman,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes. 4, approval of consent agenda items 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E, 8B, 8C, D-A-E-A-F-H-G-H-H.
Madam President,
Mr. Hideman?
I have a small question on 8C. There's travel to the Texas Music Educators Association Conference. I don't have any objection to that. Texas isn't that far away. But I'm not sure that the teacher is here. I was wondering if there's a particular reason that she's going to the Texas one. You know, we have a little rivalry with Texas. And I assume that New Mexico has also an annual music teachers conference. There could be something unique on the agenda. I was just interested in if there was something special there. But if the person's not available, I don't need to object to the item.
Catherine Miller. Catherine Miller.
Madam President, Mr. Heineman, I don't have an answer for you on that, but I could get back to you on that. Texas isn't too far away. They're not going across country. I'm sure this is a scheduling issue with respect to which conferences were when, and this one obviously is before testing. Maybe the one during the Mexico one was during testing. I'm not sure, but I can find out for you.
Yeah, and Texas is a big state. They actually have some very strong music programs in Texas, so I'm assuming it's a good conference. I was just interested.
Madam President,
Yes.
I have a question, Superintendent, Acting Superintendent, on the 6 for the financial section on E for current bills, operational, federal projects, food services, and other. I know that we do have the financial here. Do we also have something in our packet regarding the financial section?
Not with
Giovanna?
Giovanna, do we have anything for 6E in the
Madam
financial
Chairman,
section?
I looked over those items on my website, on her website that she gives to me every week. I saw no questions that I needed to be answered, and they seem to be all legitimate. So thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Hyatt, the information is rather long. It's usually over 100 pages, so that is posted to our website. It is emailed for review. Just because the document is pretty extensive, it would take a lot of paper to print at each board meeting, especially for 2 accounts payable runs between each board meeting. But all of those are available on the Gallup McKinley County Schools website for review for any individual.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Mr. Hyatt, I just had 2 questions on B1 and B3, the dates. You could get back to me, too, if you don't have it right off. B1 and B3.
Yeah, the student travel, they're not listed as dates.
We apologize, Madam President. We will get you those dates by email.
Okay. Wishes of the board?
I'd like to make a motion that the consent agenda items be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Manini.
Madam President, Giovanna, Mrs. Hanks has a few things to say about the budget. There is one correction that we know of.
Okay.
I do apologize. As many of you are aware,
Madam President, the first item that I would like to report on is over the last month or so, we've had some great opportunities as administration and as an Indian Education Committee, along with our Director of JOM, Ms. Carmen Moffitt, to work together, not only in work sessions, but some regular meetings with the Indian Education Committee. One of those sessions I wanted to report on from an administrator's point of view And I think hopefully the IEC president or whoever is here in her place hopefully will give a little bit of information from the Indian Education Committee's end. This last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago, we had the opportunity to do a work session, talk about several topics that were that the Indian Education Committee had questions on, and the administration had a chance to answer and discuss some of those issues that the Indian Education Committee had, or IEC. We had some great conversations regarding donations and fundraising, the requisition process to clear up any confusion, Open Meetings Act, allowable and non-allowable costs, the state PED guidelines versus the JOM, and parental costs. And we were able to cover, I believe, in depth and answer the questions for most of those. There was only one item that we are going to bring back to the table to do a work session again and do a training on, and that is the fundraising aspect of the district. And so we're going to give more information on that in a breakout session. It became a little bit too long, and so that we could work on that solely. It was a great opportunity to work together. I think it was productive between administration and the IEC, and we made a lot of progress. Sometimes we have not made progress in the past. This meeting was very productive. I know a couple of board members were there also and may want to make some comments regarding that meeting. I did want to make one clarification. One thing that was brought up at the meeting that I think that the superintendent or administration needs to clear up is that often when we have talked about the JOM funds and the IEC, or the Indian Education Committee, we intermingle those two acronyms with each other. I just want to make sure it's clear that the JOM funds are different than the Indian Education Committee. The Indian Education Committee is a group of parents that represent schools and students. The JOM fund is actually a fund that is a flow-through grant to the Navajo Nation, to the district. The Indian Education Committee does not handle JOM funds. They do not sign or produce purchase orders or anything of the nature of that. And so, as has been recorded and talked about, we have had some corrective actions that we've had to accomplish as a district, and those corrective actions revolve around the administrative side of JOM funds. It is not the Indian Education Committee that the problem lied. It lied from the central office end. I just want to make that clarification that the district has implemented all the things necessary to accomplish or complete our corrective action plan, and we just relay that information of how we're going to work better with those funds to the Indian Education Committee and to the community. So again, I want to make that clarification that it is not an IEC problem. It is a administration end or central office problem that we have had to correct over the past year. With that, if anybody else has any comments regarding this session from the board, I welcome those comments about this session.
Madam President.
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Hyatt, is there any way that you can submit that to the Gallup Independent so that they could retrack all the misconstrued information that they have been posting and sending out in their Gallup Independent, where school board members have been attacked, and it has been really misconstrued that we are to blame when it came down to the Indian education, the JOM funds? I would appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm willing to put out, we just did it publicly, but I can also put it in writing also. I know that the state is also aware that this is a central office administrative thing that we've had to correct. It's not specifically related to the Indian Education Committee. But yeah, they're here. If they have questions for me, I can talk about it, or I can submit it in writing.
Yes, I would really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Hyde and Board President.
I would like to comment on the work session. I think just the feeling that everybody got coming into the meeting was warm, inviting, and it was disappointing again that the news media wasn't present at that time, because there was a lot that was discussed, a lot of clarifications that were made, and just the morale of the meeting was really good. And I would like to thank administration, Giovanna for being there, Mr. Hyatt for being there. You guys answered a ton of the parents' questions, and I think that they really appreciated that. I know as a board member I did, and I think just having everything out in the open and the transparency there was very uplifting to a lot of our parents, and that's all we wanted was the clarification and having that the corrective action plans being addressed, and that they are resolved. Most of them are resolved, and I think that we can put that where it belongs, that the district, the administration has resolved everything, and that was a wonderful opportunity for us to continue to move forward and have that collaboration. Thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. Hitterman.
I want to comment also on the meeting. Excuse me. I only attended the meeting for 4 hours. And I say only because I want to recognize the IEC continues to be, in my observation, a hardworking group. They were there, I think that day I think their work session went probably 7 hours. And so I want to report that and observe that it's not a play session, and they're continuing to work, and some of it's complicated. When you get into operating under jurisdiction and certain instructions from the Department of Education, and then the feds, and then the district, there's a lot of things to learn and work through and get clarified, and I think a lot was accomplished in the 4 hours I saw there in terms of sharing information. Appreciate Mr. Hyatt and Ms. Hanks being there and answering questions and sharing information. The IEC continues. The pattern is they keep asking for they want information, and they're working on it, and they're working on things. So I think it was a very positive thing. And I also want to mention that I think during the meeting there was a request essentially the same, Ms. Jeff, as your request, saying, is there something that can be put out for the clarification that you just made, Mr. Hyatt, because we know that sometimes the IEC efforts have been, I will say, misreported and distorted. I go back, I remember the very first time I was on the board, which isn't so long ago, but one of the big news reports was how the IEC was at meeting at the casino, one of the casinos in the state, and gave the impression that they're spending their money on, at a gambling place. Well, they didn't set the meeting. It wasn't a local meeting. It was the location for the regional Navajo Nation JOM thing was set by the Department of Education. And so they went there because a lot of casinos have conference facilities. And so those are the kinds of things that the IEC has been affected by in their own work and morale and perception of them. So again, I think this last Saturday's work session was very good, and I know that Mr. Hyatt and probably some of the other people, probably Ms. Hanks too, had attended a number of the IEC subcommittee meetings recently, and I think that the committee morale is improving, and they continue to work hard at trying to operate in the best way possible.
Madam Chair?
Mrs. Jeff?
And to add to that also, Acting Superintendent, I know that we had requests that our former Superintendent, Petty, we gave directive orders for him to also send PED and maybe even the Gallup Sun and the Gallup Independent, the monitoring report that was submitted from the JOM, from the Navajo Nation, so that they too can take a look at that regarding funds that were being sent back to Navajo Nation, and the findings that they sought under that report. And so that would be a key for them to get a better understanding of the JOM funds. So thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, Mrs. Jeff, we can get that information to those entities.
Thank you.
Madam President, if there's no other questions or comments, the next item is a report by our Indian Education Committee President, and we'd like to invite her up to the podium to give a report also.
Good evening, Board of Directors, staff, administrators, guests, parents. First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Directors for the work session. I wasn't present there, but I did get an update from some of our parents. Yes, Mr. Hyatt had been a great intervention and has been a good collaboration for the Indian Education Committee. There are some areas that weren't fully addressed according to the parents. I wanted to make sure I got an update. And the kiddie fund, I did get this clarified from our vice president and secretary and treasurer that was there at the meeting. They said they still had, that's not truly clarified on that, as well as the guidelines on the donation. And then this came up, number 3 came up. If the Gallup McKinley County Board of Directors, along with the administrators, were going to reconsider or redefine to, I think, some of the parents that are Gallup McKinley County School employees, if that was going to be reconsidered. The Indian policy and procedures, that has not, I had to get this clarified. The Indian policy and procedures, we did request for the previous packets from Ms. Pauletta White, and they have not received that yet, as well as getting the packets in a timely manner. Those are just minor issues. Bylaws were also on hold because Ms. Giovanna Hanks needs to be present at our bylaws, because when we get our bylaws done and then after the fact it comes in question. My biggest concern with the per diem rate was we have an application, it's set in stone for the whole school year, and then we come into this mid-half year and then the business office says, oh, the per diem rates change, you're going to have to, you know, go down a few cents. But we already have our application set in stone. Why isn't this change made until the next school year? That's what my concern was. Where does it say that we have to change it within the mid-school year? Because we already, you know, we already set our application, but that's something we need to clarify with Ms. Giovanna Hanks as well. I just want to thank Mr. Hyatt for the great assistance in providing the information we longed for. He sees the deficiencies we've been having, and he stepped in, and you've really been, you know, I know the parents were really, you know, should I trust him or what? But I think they see that because you've been attending our subcommittee meetings as well, that they see they can trust you. And with our youth leadership conference, we're working on that and setting up dates for that, and Ms. Carmen Moffat's working with the schools because the conference is now going to be something like a leadership, and that's going to be set at the schools. We don't have incentives set in our application, so it did indicate that Mr. Hyatt will look into some other program funds to see if he would provide some incentives, and it was something real small like books, native culture books. Otherwise, I appreciate you meeting with you, and you did offer that you wanted to meet with me, and when I make that time, I will come and meet with you. And I really appreciate you making the time and the effort to show that you're willing to work with us. And that's all we've been asking for the past 2 years, and we never got that. And then now you're in there, and I really appreciate everything you've done for us up to this point. And with the board intervening and helping, I mean, that shows a lot for us, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica, I just wanted to comment on the number 3.
Sure.
With the clarification of the IEC members. What was discussed during the work session was that was a requirement from Navajo Nation that was something that was brought to the district that, so with you asking the administration at Gallup McKinley County Schools to reconsider that or redefine that, that is something that needs to be addressed with Navajo Nation JOM first. And if they can do that, I think that's the next step, because we got that, I don't know if you want to say delegated or that was their policy that they brought upon us. So I would talk with Eleanor or Hess Committee or something to see where they're getting that regulation from, that they're saying that officials, school officials or something like that, they're giving us a different definition than what we're used to. So maybe you could ask.
I will do that. I felt that our previous person had a big influence on what the clarification of not having an employee be a parent of IEC. That's the impression I got from them, because they couldn't provide us anything solid in black and white that an employee couldn't be, that was a conflict of interest, because in the past that was waived from the district. And then every time we talked to Navajo Nation, they would say, oh, talk to your district, talk to your board of directors. So, but I will consider and look into that.
Thank you. Thank you for your report.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Mr. Hinneman.
I have a question, and I'll tell you what the question is, and see whether we'd like Ms. Yazzie to answer it now or wait, because it relates to the item on the agenda about the Indian policies and procedures. We have an action item for approval of those policies and procedures, but in the report, number 5 says that the IEC has still not, quote, still have not received copies of the Indian policy and procedures. So I'd like to know where that's at.
That was previous Indian policy and procedures that we requested from Ms. White. Yes, it was approved. It was approved at the IEC meeting, but we requested for the previous Indian policy and procedures because we had parents that wanted to see if any of the input they've been given, you know, year after year was even being considered in the application. So that was the request we made for the previous Indian policy and procedures.
Okay, so they did see them now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Madam President,
Mrs. Jeff.
I just want to thank you, Monica? Okay, thank you, for presenting this to us, your monthly report, and I'm glad that there is collaboration and that there is the collaboration between the members, and then that there's communication that has taken place. I do have some questions, and I don't know if this was answered at the last school board meeting, but one of them is, I read in the well, I don't buy the papers. Let me put that out there. But I do have a question about the Gallup Independent. There was an article December 27th, 2016 of last year, and that was in regards to the Indian education refuses to provide packets to public. I was kind of curious as to what that was about. And then number 2, I'm still concerned if there was any collaboration or if there was any phone calls, attempted phone calls that was made to the Navajo Nation regarding the tribal clothing. And then the third one is, maybe Ms. Carmen Muffet can answer this question, and I don't know if this was asked at the last meeting as well, but I want to know the deficiencies that were brought down for the JOM program. Were those deficiencies met and were they corrected? So if you can provide those answers for me, I would really appreciate that.
The packet that was given to us during our work session, all it was what we were going to talk about that day. It wasn't something, I mean, there was just enough packets for the IEC members. And everything we do goes through Carmen. So the Gallup Independent could have easily went to Carmen, asked them for a copy of our packets. It was nothing hidden or anything. Everything we do is public. And all it had to do with was what our meeting was going to be with from that day. That's all it was. We just didn't have enough packets to give to Gallup Independent that day. As far as the tribal clothing, I believe some schools got some just totally can't get them. You're just going to have to wait till next year. But to keep in mind that this year they're going to have, they usually start in the spring, so you have to be aware it could even happen during the spring break of this year. That they're going to have a work, they're going to have a, like a I don't want to say work session, but they're going to have like a where they're going to tell the administrative assistants or secretaries what's going to be needed. First come, first serve. I know Rama used to get there, and we'd have our tribal clothing for all the returning students to have it filled out, so they already have the tribal clothing packets ready, and it would be already sent off by the time school started. So those schools that they have missed out, there's nothing we can do about it. Some schools, I believe, are still going to get some. I'm not sure if they did, but we just missed out already. We're just going to have to wait till this fall again. But we have to, they're going to have it, I'm going to say, during the time that we might have our spring break, so we're going to have to be aware that somebody needs to go over there to represent our schools for tribal clothing. Thank you.
Madam President and Monica, and maybe even you, Ms. Muffet, can you at least give us an advance announcement when this comes out? And then second of all, I'd like to know the list of schools that receive the tribal clothing for the students. If you can get that maybe at our next meeting, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
I would like to address, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to respond to some of your questions. Ms. Manuelito, Mr. Hyatt, and Ms. Jeff, in regards to your question regarding the IUC, it's not the IUC not wanting to release. There was one meeting that we had, and explained it to the IUC members. So there was one meeting, an IUC meeting we had, and generally we make enough packets for all the IUC members and additional packets as well. But there was one IUC meeting where we had a lot of visitors that meeting. And so when the visitors come in, they take the agenda, they take the packets. So there were about 2 to 3 occasions where we ran out of packets. We had to run to the back and then make copies, because IUC members come in. It's like, okay, I need my packet. There's no more packets. We ran out of packets. So we have to run back, make some more copies. We come back, we make enough copies for those IUC members. Then additional IUC members come in, and then they're requesting packets, and we have to run in the back. And I have to be attentive to the IUC. I can't be running back and forth making packets. So we changed it. We said, okay, we're going to stop this. We're going to redo this again, and what we're going to do is make enough packets for IUC and put them on the tables with their name tag, similar to what you get. You get your packets. And then anybody else who would like to request, a packet can. So we had a request through the Gallup Independent, wanted a packet. So my question was, well, if they request a packet, do they have to go through a district formal process of requesting such a request for public records? And they, they requested to. At this moment, we have to. So I had a conversation with Mr. Hyatt to talk about that, about how do we do it? Is there a form? Should I give them a form? And then so he explained to me they can do it verbal, they can do it via email, but if anybody requests a form, we should be able to provide them a packet. And I said, well, that's not a problem at all. And so what he recommended from now on is if there's specific organizations, entities, or visitors that come on a regular basis and want a packet, automatically maybe we can just have a packet ready for them. Or if they can notify our JOM office 3 days in advance that they would like to have a copy, we would gladly make a copy for them. So at this last IUC meeting, we developed a packet specifically for Sonia, for the Gallup Independent, for her, as well as another parent who attends on a regular basis who also requested a packet. So we're glad to make these packets ahead of time. We just don't want to run into a situation where we have packets and people take them and then we don't have enough for IUC members. So we reorganized our meetings a little bit better to ensure all of our IUC members get a packet. But if visitors come in, then we'll of course provide them with the packet, but not at that moment of the meeting. We can't do that. We can do that after the meeting, when the meeting is over. I don't mind going to the back and making copies if I have the time, or for them to allow me to, a few days, or maybe their name and address, and I can mail the packet to them. But we reorganized, and that's what resulted into the IEC not wanting to release, and that's not true. We're willing to release the packet, no problem, and to anybody who would like to request one, just let us know ahead of time. I'm sorry, I can't do it at the time of the meeting or any time that I'm busy. You need to understand that I need to tend to the IEC, just like Joan. If somebody were to request a packet from the board, she can't leave the board. She has to be attentive. Maybe after or later on, in a few days, give us some time. We'll be glad to give anybody a packet of whatever the IEC members receive. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I
The
appreciate
next
it.
one, the next question that you had was about the, I believe it was a BIA monitoring report, that one,
Yes.
okay. So we submitted, we requested an extension. If you recall, I reported that, we received a very late notice regarding this monitoring report and the opportunity for our district to respond. I knew we needed more time. So I worked with the Navajo Nation to request for an extension. We did. We were granted by the BIA. We met about 3 to 4 days before the deadline. I went and had delivered 2 binders, two binders with documents that we had collected, because it did take some time, and we submitted it to the Navajo Nation and for them to review. They did respond back. There's a little bit of information that they need, a little bit more information. The binders and the documents, it's fine. Everything is okay with what we have in terms of documents to submit. The only thing they wanted a little bit more clarification on some of the components. That's it. It's a minor thing that needs to be done. And then we're going to go ahead and resubmit those for Navajo Nation to review, just to make sure, and we agreed on this, that we're going to review our summaries, just to make sure that we're all on the same page before we officially submit it to the BIA. So that came along pretty well. The only concern, I think, that maybe arose out of the areas that we needed to address was the communication. There was an area on component number 1, which was the program needed to communicate with the board, with the parents, with the IEC, with Navajo Nation JOM, and generally with parents about the program. So I'm in looking at it a little bit more closely. I'm going to be looking at minutes from previous board meetings, because if you recall, last year, our program managers did make reports to the Board of Education, so that serves as documentation. And so we're going to collect a few other things to strengthen what we had submitted, but other than that, all the components and everything was addressed in those binders, and we hope to keep a copy here for ourselves for any of you who would like to review it. But yeah, that did take time, just a matter of collecting. It really took time, and the challenge was the schools responding to submitting culturally relevant lesson plans that dealt specifically with the items that were purchased last school year. So, any other questions?
And Madam President,
Mrs. Jeff?
where are you gonna leave that with the acting superintendent so that we could review that as well? Because I'd like to have a copy of that,
Okay.
if I may. Thank you.
Maybe what I could do is make an extra copy and then provide it to Superintendent's office.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to make a comment, Carmen. I know that one thing that I hope is helping our community members and parents, or whoever wants to review our board packet, is putting it on the website. And maybe that's something that the IEC can, look at, discuss, to see if that's something that they would like to do, is start putting it on the website, their agenda, and, whatever you guys are presenting on that, before your IEC meetings, and that way, we won't have this issue. They can make their own copies, or, whatever they need to. Just a thought.
And Mr. Hyatt did bring that information to my attention, so we're going to discuss that with the IUC and see if that's something that would be feasible for their meetings. So that's a great idea. Thank you. I also wanted to mention, we did get, in terms of the request for public records, we did get a request from the Gallup Independent. They wanted all the documents that had to do with the IUC for the month of December. So we provided that last week, which we had a deadline to submit. So the Gallup has all the documents for the whole month of December. They requested that. And the second thing that they requested on a request for public records were all my emails to the IEC starting from August to December of 2016. And that is several months worth of emails that I have to produce, as well as emails to school employees. So that's, again, that's a, I received notice also pretty late on the IPRA, so I have requested an extension on this second one, which will require more time to obtain all the documents that have been requested. Any other questions?
Thank you, Carmen.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Madam President, that ends any reports from the superintendent. And
Madam President,
Go ahead, Mr. Hideman.
I'd like to ask a question. I think in the past we've had the privilege of asking information under the general title of the superintendent's report. And I understand there was some professional development done for administrators lately on cultural approaches to education. Don't have those specifics in front of me, but wondering if there's anything you can share with us on
Sure.
what was done and what the approach was and who was included in that training.
yes, Madam President, Mr. Heinemann, I will speak in general about that, and Dr. White, if she wants to add anything, she's welcome to do so. Last year, I think everybody knows, in the community and the school board and in our district, we had some concerns with some employees, with some of the comments and things that they had said or done. And so, as a part of the district, a couple actions that we took is, one is we made sure that all of our administrators had the opportunity to receive cultural sensitivity type training. And so there's been 2 sessions of that, and I think we've at this point covered most, if not all, of district administration. We also require this year, as we mentioned earlier on, that we have a Safe Schools program which allows us to provide online training for employees, and one of those trainings revolves around discrimination. And so all of our employees each year are required to go through a training online in dealing with discrimination and other things that are necessary or needed. So, Dr. White, does that cover it? Okay.
So the training was in a sense generic as far as the idea of culture and so on. It wasn't particularly local, tailored to our local cultures.
No, the gentleman, I'm not sure his name, Dr. White, can fill that in, but a gentleman we hired from the outside to come in to provide that training for administration. So it encompassed cultural sensitivity, encompassed recognizing bias and things like that. So from what I heard, it was a positive experience.
Mr. Heinemann, thank you for the question. Members of the board, we had 2 sessions with Dr. Hawley, Cherokee Hawley. So it's basically culturally and linguistics responsive education, CLRI, yeah. So it's basically in general, it's not necessarily targeted towards Native Americans or any other ethnic groups, it's just sensitivity in general.
I thank you. I don't want to go into tangent on that. I just was wondering what level, because what goes through my head is that's good and that's a start, and then I wonder how it gets applied, translated to our specific cultures at times. And I'm thinking, for example, way back when I started teaching, first time in Navajo area, we were told in those years, and there's still some practice along this line, I don't think it's quite as strong, that you don't touch students' hair, because of the teaching in Navajo about hair and what that represents and so on. So a teacher might be well-intended and pat a kid on the head, meaning as a positive gesture, but culturally it might violate some things. So I'm saying you might be trying to be culturally sensitive. How do you know what the specific contents of those practices are? There still has to be fleshed out sometimes in terms of the concrete do's and don'ts and background and so on. So, but I trust that lays some foundation in the groundwork for reorientation.
If there's no further questions, Madam President, I've completed my report.
Thank you. Moving on to 2 board reports. We'll go ahead and start with Mr. Manini.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to thank our culinary arts people that are in our audience, the SFE, for their dinner tonight. If Mr. Cunningham would stand, and all everybody else that belongs to that organization will give us a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Jeff?
I have no report, thank you.
Mr. Hideman?
A couple things to mention. One is these aren't really board activities, but I still want to mention them so people know what we're up to and what we're interested in and what we do sometimes as board members, because it still affects sometimes our views and our interests. But I want to say I enjoyed hearing some of the winter Ma'ichotloche, the coyote stories on KJLP a couple weeks ago. It was a good present. It was good. And then last Thursday, I think it was, I went to the library's Coffee with a Cop session, and I didn't go as a school board member, but I ended up at the table, and I apologize, I can't think of his name. One of the Gallup policemen who works with the schools, I've seen him, and I should be able to say his name, but it turns out he's a bagpipe player. So you never know what talent is around our community that you're not aware of. I didn't know. It turned out we have 2 people in Gallup, at least, that play bagpipe. And so that was just an interesting discovery about another talent I didn't know existed. The other thing, Thursday, along with Ms. Manuelito, I was in Santa Fe and Mr. Hyatt, and I was involved with 3 meetings. One was with the lobbyists. A big portion of the discussion of that meeting, it wasn't a long meeting, but was on impact aid and how the state funding formula and impact aid regulations and so on might be reviewed and maybe modified if possible, maybe not easily done, and so on, but that was an important topic. And then we met with the Deputy Secretary of Education on the PED, Public Ed Department's notice to the school board, and went over our understandings, comparing notes and information, because as a lot of the public knows, we've received directives from the PED based on information that is often not verified and is not verified with the board. They send us directives without talking to us ahead of time as to whether the information is accurate or not. And so we had a pretty good discussion second time. We've had discussion about that and trying to clarify understandings and so on, and where that leads we'll see. And then we met with the member of the state procurement office on some questions about how RFPs and different kinds of proposals and bids work, different approaches for different types. The person was very helpful. And then just today I had a follow-up phone conversation. I can share those details further with board members and with Mr. Hyatt and with Marcos later on, clarifying again some of the things that we can do for different kinds of RFP. And of course it was revolving around the need to obtain legal services again for the board. But they were very helpful, and he indicated he'd be quite happy to provide more information, or if we want to get on the phone together so we can all hear it at the same time. He's very open to all that. So that was helpful, but it's not like we finished the process.
Thank you, Mr. Hitta. Ms. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just kind of slipped my mind. I just wanted my colleagues and as well as the audience out there that the New Mexico legislators had convened today, and I know that one of the huge topics that they're going to be discussing is the budget. And then the other one is, I had read 2 articles. I'm trying to find the other one, but this one had to do, it was in the Albuquerque Journal. Some of you want to look this up, January 7th, and it had to do with education, the quality report. It ranks New Mexico 49th in the nation. So we're still at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to education for the state of New Mexico. And the other one had to do with third grade retention. And that had to do with struggling students who cannot read. And so those are two huge issues that was in the Albuquerque Journal that I wanted to share with everybody. So if I could, maybe next time I could get copies and then go ahead and give that out to you, school board members. So thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
I did attend the Coyote Canyon chapter meeting this past Sunday, along with all three of our principals from Tohatchi Elementary, Tohatchi Mid School, and the Tohatchi High School. Our principals did a very good job delivering to the community updates of what's going on within their schools. They did a great job answering questions that the community had, and I do appreciate them for coming out to the Coyote Canyon chapter to address the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. For myself, I attended 3 planning meetings for our local chapter, which is the Yambato chapter, Baca chapter, and Theru chapter. I'm very thankful that I text Mr. Hyatt on 2 of them, the Baca chapter and Theru chapter. He did come out to the Baca chapter. What day was that on, Mr. Hyatt? Thursday, the 5th?
Two Sundays ago.
Okay. And did a presentation on the January 8th to our Baca chapter membership there. We did have the Theru chapter scheduled on the 15th, but there was a cancellation for that chapter meeting's regular chapter meeting. As mentioned, we did attend the I did attend the IEC work session on January 7th here in the boardroom. I would also like to say thank you to the Crown Point, Segai, and Theru counselors that came out to attend the 3-day positive cultural framework training that was held here at the Gallup, I think it's the fire department over there by the community center, Gallup Community Center. It was a very informative training, and I'm so thankful that they attended that training. As Mr. Hideman reflected, we did go to Santa Fe last Thursday to meet with our legislators and then our Mr. Paul Aguilar and also procurement, state procurement. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Okay, moving forward, we have our notices and communication. February 3rd is Indian Day at Legislator in Santa Fe. February 6th is another board meeting. February 7th is school board elections. February 9th is Gallup Day, again in Santa Fe. February 21st is our Board of Education meeting. February 22nd through the 25th is the New Mexico School Board Association Board Institute. March 6th is our board meeting at Theru Elementary at 4 p.m. Any other? Mr. Hidman.
I'd like to ask a clarification. I didn't realize this until shortly before the meeting because I printed out another copy. On the website, we have a schedule of district and cultural awareness nights coming up, and I realized I had two sets of dates, and I'm assuming that one of these, that the dates got moved back a little and adjusted, but I want to know for myself and everyone else which of these unless there's 2 things going on, but it doesn't look that way. There's one that started out with dates of January 10, 12, 17, 19, and so on, and then the next one, and I'm assuming, I didn't know which one I printed later, I'm assuming the current one is the one with the dates moved back, 12, 19, 24, 26, 31, going into February. But just to alert all of us, if you were like me and had the earlier dates and now they've changed, I don't know if we're aware of they look the same, and I'm assuming it's change of dates, not that they were doing two events at each school. Aware of that?
Madam President, Mrs. Moffett, do you have any information regarding those cultural day changes, or if they're the most recent, or maybe Dr. White? These are regarding cultural activities and schools, cultural days at schools?
The events are identified as the same type of events.
Show them.
Here. Earlier dates are actually the correct. Thank you.
Madam President, I did have one addition also. We just found out today that there is the open house and dedication for Rama Elementary. It's going to happen on February 1st. At 2:30 will be the dedication. At 4:30 will be the open house. So again, that's February 1st, 2:30 and 4:30
2:30 and 4:30.
at Rama, at the new school.
February 1st. Oh, good. I don't have anything. Board members, is there any other board members that are attending that? If we need to advertise it, I know I'll be there, but anybody else? Mr. Manini?
I'll plan on going to Rama on that date, February 1st.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then we won't need to advertise it. Voila. Okay. Next is number 4, Southwest Food Services Excellence Discussion.
Madam President, I know there have been several questions that I've been asked that I've responded to, and there's still some more questions revolving around Southwest Food Excellence Services that they provide our district. And so I invited Chef Neal here to just give a 5-minute short presentation and be able to take questions or concerns relating to our food service in the district. I also wanted to recognize Chef Neal. I believe he's being recognized at the state legislative session this year during Gallup Days. I believe they're recognizing him for getting all of our students in the entire district free lunch. So turn the time over to Chef Neal.
Madam President, congratulations on your motion, and Happy New Year to all. Board members. So we have 2 pamphlets I handed out earlier. One is customer satisfaction surveys. When Mike had brought some his concerns to me, we submitted these to the ELT team for review. That has certain questions that are age appropriate for our student body that we'd like to pass out around this time of year, and it helps give us feedback, how we're doing, what they'd like to see served to them, coming up, and just how things are going. The good thing is, because we are able to react daily on what we serve the students, we can adjust and take care of our children in our school district. So that packet in here, along with that is some nutrition facts on the very last page with sodium levels and all the things that we obtained through the school year and through our audit last year. We've completed our audit, and that was completed in May for a full fiscal review. We had no fiscal findings at all. Our schools actually scored one of the highest scores in the state. All schools had no issues at all in the school cafeterias. They passed with flying colors with compliance, food nutrition, and counting and claiming. So that was a great review. With that, we were asked to apply for the HUSC award, which basically is a 4-tier process where we have to meet, exceed all nutrition standards given to us by not only the state of New Mexico and PED, but the USDA. We submitted the application, did all the legwork, did all the review of the schools, everything accomplished needed for that first level tier, and we were the only one in the state of New Mexico awarded that award. No one has ever received it in the state of New Mexico. Not Santa Fe, not Las Cruces, not APS. We are the only one to receive that in all 19 of our elementaries. So their nutrition and all the guidelines they receive, we exceeded everything they asked us. So with that, now it's gone from the state level to the federal level, USDA, and they're reviewing us for all the paperwork that the state turned into us for them. And we'll receive a bronze medal, and that gives each school $500 to be able to spend as we need to help encourage students and move forward with us to the next level, which would be a silver. With that, it incorporates bonding with the PE coaches and the schools to do more physical opportunities with our food program. And then as we reach that level, we'll keep going until we get to the gold level. And then they have one that's really hard to get, but it's the next level above gold. It's like an outstanding gold level here, and it's in your packet. So everything that's what the Husk Award is in that packet also, so you can read up on that and maybe Google it. But we do want to acknowledge that our 19 schools were able to get to that bronze level. With that being said, the other packet here is basically the first semester in a snapshot. The first page there is the letter where we were able, with the program last year, to increase student participation and grow the program enough where we're physically able, financially, with the support of PED and the National School Lunch Program, to offer free and paid lunch and breakfast to every Gallup McKinley County student in the district when nobody has to pay anything. Everybody was able to have free lunch across the board. There's a letter that went out to all parents so that the families that had to pay for their students to come to school no longer have to. When they come in, all lunches are provided to them and breakfast. To be able to do that, we had to grow the program enough that it was financially stable, and then we could able to do that. The next page is our 6-year review, so you can kind of see where the growth has been and where our enrollment's kind of going and how the finances have gone. We have started for as far as I could go back, was the 2011-12 year with the district enrollment of 12,122. It declined about 726 students over the few years that we've been here. The student counts and meals were about 12,000.
Are you in this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the blue SFE McKinley one. And that's going to be page 2.
Thank you.
So you'll see that I basically had the 80-day comparison when we finished up December. That's the last reporting we did to the state, being in the month of January. We had 81 days. Our average enrollment was 11,386 students, and our meal equivalents, meals served per day, were 16,840 meals. Over the 6-year outlook, we've grown the program by 4,554 student meals a day. With that, it had generated, if you look at the total dollars, we had $2,298,940 in 2012, with 81-day comparison. And this year, we're at $3,193,940 $151,000 in revenue generated without a parent having to pay a dime to the district for lunch. So we're able to bring it in. We're not gaining money to the coffers, but we're able to pay for those students, extra 5,000 students, to have free breakfast and lunch without diminishing what we earn in every day. So that's a pretty good stats. The best thing I like about this is we're at 1,364,000 meals served, only 81 days in. That roughly is, if you look at the 2012, or even over last year, the 2 years, we're at over 364,000 meals served more. So that's pretty much where we're at. We got a lot of exciting things going on this year. Not only were we able to concentrate on serving every student, but we've been able to improve our sports meals, and it's ever continuing. We have some items coming in to help us with tools to help grow participation. We have, with the support of the district, purchasing food trailers and food trucks, but food trailers and grills to be able to do some fresh cooking at the schools and do fundraising for our students at night to help them be able to fundraise. We have, I met today with our coffee brokers, and they're actually doing the wiring and the installation of equipment 21 days from now for roll out every our 9 high schools will all receive it, but 2 at a time, so that we can start our free coffee program where we can train students to have a quality coffee in the morning that's not 1,000 calories. When I met with the state, they wanted us to pilot the program where students are going to major places and having all kinds of stuff put in their coffee, and it's just not good for them. So we offer skim milk, sugar-free items for them to develop a taste at a younger age. When they do order a coffee, they'll have a healthy coffee. So it'll be free to them. So we'll offer that with our trailers out front with fresh-made cinnamon rolls and muffins and things like that to help them encourage having breakfast. We also are starting our new, and as you look through the packets on happenings, we're starting a new, every school has a new water station coming in, where it'll be resort-style water with lemon and cucumber and different things for them to not only enjoy a glass of water, but to refill their water bottles and to help them with keep hydrated. We also have smokers purchased for each of the high schools, so you guys got to sample the dinner tonight. The pulled pork was actually from Maya Mira, and we're installing little security locks on the doors on them and things like that, so that when they're outside smoking, there can be no contaminants. That was a request by the Environmental Health.
Smoking meat, right?
Smoking meat to add flavor. Yes, I'm sorry, my guess. Smoking meat for them to enhance flavors in what they're serving, but not actually adding calories or fats to it. We got a lot of exciting things. So I know I've got 5 minutes. Mike knows that I'll go for an hour and a half on my program, but
I gave you 5 thinking you go 10, and you just hit 10, so good job.
Okay, I'll let you go. But I'm here for questions to answer and help.
Well, I don't like to beat around the bush. I do meet with a lot of my children through the community center and then through my visits, and also at chapter levels. I meet with a lot of parents and grandparents, and some concerns, and I think that's why we brought you to see if you can answer some of our questions. Youth are worried that I have stressed to me, I can't speak to the other board members, but to me, to where I have 6 of them here that I wrote down real quick off of the top of my head to recall. What they're saying is from the beginning, when we first brought in SFE, it was great. And now it's turning into a different direction. So that's their first concern, is they want the old SFE back. They said they had a lot of fresh fruits at the beginning. Now that's going down. They had a lot of stuff is just being repetitive, the same thing over and over again. The other thing is, we do have some of our food services individuals that have informed us they can't use spices, peppers, or anything like that, and they just want to make the food taste a little better for the children, and now they're not able to do that. They were taken away and from their kitchen. Even though they were in bulk forms, they were taken away. The other thing is the sports meals. They're having the same thing over and over again, the same chicken sandwich. And I said, well, did anything change? Did you get a peanut butter and jelly? Did you get something different? And one of the texts I got back from one of the athlete was, we get a different cookie. We get a sugar cookie or an oat milk cookie or something else to that effect. Everything else is still the same. So if you have 3 games that week, you're having the same 3 meals. If it's Friday night, Saturday night, something. So that was a big concern that that they had. The other one is seconds. They're being told that they cannot have seconds, but it goes out the back door into the trash can. And so I don't know why they can't have seconds if it's just going to go in the trash. It seems like that's a waste of money to, instead of feeding our children. And we do have some big children that, sometimes the meal they get doesn't really fulfill them. And so that was another concern. And I saw that you do have a survey here, but I don't know if the district can provide a different survey that's anonymous, so the kids don't.
These are anonymous.
Okay. Are they can they be done online to where it can be sent straight to the district?
Well, we can give it to them, and we can have them turned into the principals or emailed in or anything like that.
So those are the ones I have that I just wanted to stress to you and to your staff about those.
Sure. And I have an answer to most of them. And I might have to, I'm getting a little older now. You see all the gray hair. I might have to ask you to kind of help me walk you through the 5 questions or so. The first one is seconds. That one's a pretty easy question. Federal regulations doesn't allow me, because of the Healthy Nutrition Act and Child Obesity laws and regulations, they don't allow us to serve a second meal because everything we do is analyzed, and we have a calorie range. If you look at that last page in the customer satisfaction, and then in the whole process we just went through was about that. We have a range between minimums and maximum calories we can serve a student. And the second meals would just take that analysis and blow it out of the water. So what we do is we do have some waste, but it's very little. We try to predict and forecast what our students like and enjoy. We try to prepare a few percentages over of every meal so that all students can have a selection every day. But there's not that much waste involved after, as many times as you serve something. As much as I am heartfelt to be able to give every student everything, I do have to follow certain rules and guidelines for that. That's not a non-flexible part of our description. I know when we first came aboard, that was part of Gallup McKinley County's culture and history. A lot of that runs with the sodium levels and fat levels and stuff like that, and with the high blood pressure rates and things like that that are well known in our communities, we really have to watch our sodium levels. So that's kind of where we were talking about. Your second question was with seasonings. The only seasoning
Neil, can you touch on what students can go back for? Because I believe you mentioned.
Oh yeah, we have unlimited salad bars. Yes, I'm sorry. They can go back fruit and vegetables all day long, and that's unlimited. That's even we have our folks, and if at the end of this, I'd love to make an invitation to all of you to come visit the schools, and I got a couple things we'll talk about. But long story short, they pocket apples and make salads and all kinds of things. They take because we do 4 or 5 different varieties of apples, different fruits every day, different canned fruits and things like that. And we are, unfortunately, this time of year is when the repetitive part comes in, because strawberries are not readily available. Kiwis are not readily available. Different fruits like the melons and things like that when we first start. And that's why I really feel for what you said, where you start out at the beginning of the year and there's melon and watermelon and cantaloupe and honeydew and different things like that out there. But as the seasons change, it's not available, or if it was, it'd be cost inhibitive. So now that February's coming around, and we've got earmarked in our budget like about $7,000 for the Valentine's Day, hoping that strawberries will come in at that time, and we can do that and start kicking off our season. Winter is a little harder. It does have the root vegetables and things like that, the carrot sticks, the broccoli, things like that. Unfortunately, that's this time of year. I'm sorry.
Spices.
Spices. So spices itself, the only thing that's ever limited in a school, and like I said, I'd love to give you tours. We've got shelves and cabinets of spices. Nothing's ever been taken out of schools. The thing that we limit is sodium. Sodium itself is in a 5-year tier to be reduced, and this is the 5th year of reduction. This is where it stays at. So we have to add tons of herbs and spices and seasoning the food. One thing that we do is we follow standardized recipes that have all the herbs and spices in it, and we've taught our staff in many, many trainings, and that's in the pamphlet you'll see here, where they're all there with the screens, with cooking classes and stuff like that, how to season without adding as much salt as you'd like to do at home. But there's an abundance. I said there's never ever been where we've taken any kind of herb or spice out of the kitchen. If nothing else, we've added to it. I believe when I first taken over, there was probably salt, pepper, and garlic. Now we have everything you think of, from poppy seeds to, lemon and everything else. So we do everything we can to enhance the food with a little less sodium. And that's only, that's not going to go away. That's actually a good thing.
Third one was the variety of meals.
Oh, variety meals. Again, we've had some little bit of problems this year with some of our purveyors not being able to provide items to us. A lot of it is coming from our Pilgrim's Pride purveyor. They had some issues in their plant being able to supply our chicken patties, our chicken nuggets, our spicy nuggets, the varieties of popcorn chicken, all the things that we need, because they've had some equipment failures where metal gets into the food and massive recalls. We had to throw away several cases of Asian food. They had the orange chicken and things like that. So we've had to find other sources and buy them from the purveyor instead of going through our commodities and stuff like that. So it creates a little bit of repetitiveness that we're actually coming out of at this point. But there's a massive variety. We have 4,000 recipes in our database, and that's where I wanted to say we have menu planning once a month, where we bring in school teachers, the public, and I'm hoping board members to sit down with the laptops in front of them to scan the recipes, to take a look, and then they actually get to choose what's on the menu for that next coming month, because we're a month ahead. So we have one planned for January 6th at 10 o'clock, where we have two of our dietitians there to help.
Say
build
January 6th at 10 o'clock? Or
January 26th?
26th.
26th at 10 a.m.
Where at?
In food service department.
So let me understand this. So you have 4,000 recipes that you guys
In our
choose
database.
from. Okay, and so you can rotate those however you
Absolutely.
choose. Okay.
Yep. And then with it, we try to make it more regional, and then we also incorporate what's in our warehouse for commodities that the state provides for us. So we menu those recipes. Was that all 5, Mike?
The last one is the variety of sports meals.
Variety of sports meals. I'm excited about sports meals. And again, we took over a program that had very little, lackluster program for sports meals. We started more of training our staff, because we've given them a lot in a little time. And we started with 2 menu items. One is a 10-inch hoagie. We provided pictures in the pamphlet with Gatorade, water, baked chips. It does provide a cookie that's whole grain. It's not really a cookie, it's a bar, and it has protein and all the things you need and high carbs. Fresh fruit, and course, the sandwich. We did a grilled chicken on a ciabatta with cheese, and then a ham and turkey sandwich with cheese and all the condiments with that. What we'd like to do, and I met with the athletic department, and we're going to start out a new one because my suggestion was to add a boxed salad. It's a nice container that has the Asian chicken or the teriyaki chicken breast on it with all your fruits and vegetables in it that's contained, and then it still has the other items that they need, that they can put in their backpack and eat a little later or drink a little later. But and then we're looking for a third and fourth. We're actually looking almost like a Lunchable where it has the diced ham, the diced chicken, the diced cheese, things like that they can pop in and eat real quick to fuel up as they need. I think last year Mr. Mitchell and myself had a little conversation on maybe teaming up and asking, because I know you're involved in a lot of the volleyball and the soccer and the basketball and things like that at Tehachi, to come up with some more ideas. We'd like to build about a six menu item that we can keep stocked in the schools as an inventory for those times where, maybe someone didn't get the form in at the right time, or the day of, and they tell you, and we're 3 weeks out from anywhere to get anything, that I can have certain things stocked in the schools that it doesn't come a hardship to the students to have it on hand. So that's where we are now. We're ahead of it, and we're actually like to grow it. But we had to start somewhere, and we got 2 programs going that I think right now they're getting to be flawless, and then we can add 3 or 4 menus to it and go from there.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, my main concern is still with the sports meals. I've gone to the past 3 away games with the Tehachi girls, and when they first mentioned that they were getting the same dried sandwich every game, so the last 3 games I checked their box, and I was very concerned when they did go to Bloomfield that they actually had a bag of hot Cheetos.
No, so we only have one. We only have one chip that we purchase,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
had-
the baked Lays.
I don't know. There was a bag of hot Cheetos in those boxes, and that was a big concern to me. I know that we don't even allow our vending machines to have such things.
Well,
So-
the baked Cheetos are allowed by our vendors, and that's a vendor.
No, this was a regular bag of hot Cheetos.
Oh, okay.
I saw it, and then this past last night I went to the Shiprock game. Those kids are not eating those lunches. It's the same sandwich over and over. They take the water, they take the Gatorade, and they leave their boxes. They don't even take them. That tells me that we're wasting money here as a school district. I don't know what, I know during your previous presentation, you did tell us that you did have different meals for different categories, such as athletes who need a lot of carbohydrates or whatever, who are going to need short energy or fast energy for a short distance race compared to long distance runner. You compared all those. Where are those meals?
Well, we have, like I said, we started with 2. The program is fairly new. We'd like to grow it. We got the inventory for those 2 items in the schools, and a procedure to actually train our staff, because these things are all after-school items, and we had to train our school to be able to be flexible in their schedules to provide, especially Saturday, Sunday meals, after-school activities, and they actually train the coaches and the teachers and administrators how to order them, to make sure they don't have after-the-fact issues with purchasing and procurement and things like that, to kind of guide them. So we're, like I said, this is a pretty new program in its infancy, and then we'll add things 2, 3, 4 times. We can grow it as much as we'd like. We've got a set standardized price so that way we can add and subtract things to make sure we fit into that bracket where it's affordable, and go from there. So like I said, we're 2 items in it. We have every opportunity to grow it. That's our 3rd one, is to add a salad for students, and then 4th, 5th, 6th menu item. We're just trying to do it correctly.
I like the idea of the salad. I mean, that I think that's something that the kids would probably do first, would be that salad.
Right.
But I don't know if there needs to be in maybe a slight increase in the dollar amount in order to make these meals to where they're actually going to eat them? Because like I said, when I see those kids not eating those meals, we're wasting money.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, because I'm all about kids eating, 100%. That's what I do, and creating. My concern is if I do it at a pace where we're not successful to be able to get them out to the kids, then we're not going to do it right, and then it's just going to go away. So we're trying, like I said, we've got 2 meals that are perfected and they're able to do proficiently. They are sandwiches. One is a chicken breast sandwich, and the other one is a hoagie sandwich, like a sub sandwich. And they seem like the first 2 things to start with. The salad, I think, is a no-brainer. We found a container. It's a nice black container with a clear lid that's attractive when you pick it up. It travels well, and I think we'll start with 2 or 3 different salads with that, where the dressing will be on the side so that the integrity of the salad will stay, and they can add it to as they get there. We actually were researching like a rice bowl. The only thing is, that's something that's got to be hot and gonna be, and things like that to travel. So we're looking at things that could maybe be heated, and then we've gone as far as trying cold spaghetti, to see how it tastes the day after and things like that. But I'd love to maybe, like I said, here comes the invitation part. We have the menu planning, and we'd love to sit down with, everybody here has great ideas, and I'd love to be able to test things out. When Mike and I were doing the sandwiches, I literally had my staff make some boxes, see if they could do it in a timely manner, and then distribute them through the building to get feedback, how they taste. Everybody chose the ciabatta bread, which is a little drier, but it holds up because you can make it Friday for that Saturday or Sunday game. So we're looking for things that actually can hold its integrity over the weekend or for a 4-hour drive, a bus drive, things like that. But, is it done? We've just started. We've got plenty of room to grow it and go from here. My goal is to have the best program for them with the best menus. I'm open for suggestions on hot meals, how we could be able to transport hot meals and sustain that. And I think that's where the surveys might come in. Maybe I can do a survey with the students that are in sports and see what's actually available. Maybe there's something in a cooler that can hold a couple hours. I'm not exactly sure when they eat their meals. Is it, 2 hours into the trip, and I can, then I can keep the degrees to a certain level where it's still quality and stays in that safe zone for temperatures, where we're not getting anybody sick before a game. So I'd like to get some feedback on that. The other thing is we're starting with our breakfast menus. We'd like to start with where they can have the yogurts and the parfaits ready to go, so they can have that going out, because I can sustain that cold with fruit and all kinds of things with that. Egg and protein sandwiches, whether it's turkey, ham, anything like that. Maybe biscuit and cheese, kind of like that route. So we're going to do some testing on the breakfast. But I'd love for you guys to come by, and we walk into the kitchen, spend an hour, and really come to some resolution with that and grow it. It's not that hard to grow now that we've got it launched. And launching it was the hardest part.
Chef Neal. Madam President, we will continue to work with SFE to provide more variety. I know we talked about quality assurance, and they have listened and are working on some of the ideas and things that you have brought to me also. If there's any other questions.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, we've been on this subject for quite a while now, and I know that we have a long agenda. I really think that I like your input, and I think that we should put this in writing and then maybe follow up with the administration with all of the concerns that we may have and even suggestions or input that we can offer as well. But I'm glad that you're open to that, and I'm glad that you're also open in allowing us to also come in to the school and to see what is there and what we can do to help.
That would be awesome. The other thing is I have chef coats for all of you, and we're ready to put them on you. So,
appreciate that.
We do have the roving chef program that we start out in January and starts moving out. We're getting dates for that. We'd love for you guys to come and cook with the kids and see how that works. It's cooking classes for all our students, and we'd love for you guys to join in. But I did this year include you in my budget with the chef coat, so you guys are all set up.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sneaking in salt.
Salt. You'd be surprised. We still have salt, but
I'm from the salt clan, so I was born for the salt clan. So.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you.
Hold on, we got one more question.
Madam President, yes, I have one. I'm interested in this thing you call the hydration station?
Yes.
Is that hydrated water with fruits and vegetables, that during the meal or something outside of the meals?
We're going to start it from the first minute they walk into the building. We're going to train our staff to fill those first. We're really limited in some of the equipment in the schools. A lot of schools don't have a lot of hot wells and different things like that. So this year we budgeted for basically double containers of that you can put punch in or different things like that in. But we're going to fill them with water. We're teaching our staff to freeze, because we don't have ice machines. We're freezing little blocks of ice that'll have a couple things in it, like orange slices, lemon slices, different things like that. So when they float around, it shows color, because you eat with your eyes. You know what I mean? You're entertained by what you see.
So
And
is that to be available to students all day?
all day long. So the first thing the staff will do is wheel that out in the morning, because there's ongoing PE, those multi-purpose rooms. So that'll be there for them from the beginning to when the staff leaves at night. They'll come and wash them and leave, and then they're done. They'll put it away, refreeze things for the next day. But they'll add cucumbers, berries, different things that we have on hand at different times, lemon slices. And then we'll have one that, we'll have two different flavors, and we'll see how that goes. We might have to keep one just plain, where they can fill their water bottles up with that. We're also, if you look in there, we did a national school lunch week, where the students had breakfast and lunch all week. They earned a little band that goes around. That was huge. We had over 5,000 participants for that. We'd like to do a contest like that for water hydration, and maybe we're able to fund getting each student their own personal water bottle that they can click onto their backpack. So we're researching the prices of that and what it would cost to entail to buy 10,000 water bottles that they can have and keep and take home with them. Encouraged to refill those every day.
I just have two requests. I would like to see your plan on the culinary arts program that you're asking, that you said that we were going to implement, and I know it's not really implemented yet, right?
Well, we've had meetings with both culinary teachers and a gentleman that runs the program through, I can't remember the name of the program here in town.
Okay.
But we've had two different meetings with them where we've asked them to be able to supply students when we get our new culinary trailers and things like that, to be able to teach them a trade on how to maybe have a food truck where they can run, register or make menus for that day and take whatever they have on hand, and plus use those vending carts for fundraising at night, where they can maybe monitor and supervise ongoing other programs. But yeah, we've had those meetings with culinary.
Okay, so I would like to see a plan on that, and then also I know we had some questions, I think from Mr. Mitchell, about the staffing. How does your staffing look now? I know that we have some under our district that we pay for, some under your program, and we just want to see the numbers on those.
Sure. Real quick, I believe we have 34 staff members left with GMCS. Everybody else is SFE. Of course, they are all the same staff. This staff came from GMCS. We supervise and monitor them equally. We've had a great transition.
What's your total number of cooks?
With subs and stuff, sometimes we're up over 160.
Okay, so
Yeah.
160 minus 34 would
Yeah.
be your employees.
And that includes warehouse. That number includes the warehouse employees that are under our umbrella. But we've had a great turnover. We have folks that are converting over as they go, and just great response with that. We also, with that amount of staff and stuff, we have pretty much 100% fill rate. We don't have the growing pains of the district on being able to make sure we supply folks out to the schools. Every day, we have plenty of people calling out sick, and especially with this flu weather and stuff like that. It's been tight with subs, but we send folks, and then I have my staff here, so we are Plan B. So, the kids are getting fed on time and with plenty of help.
Madam President?
Yes.
One
Mr.
follow-up, if I may. Mr. Hyatt, in connection with getting kids to be hydrated and so on, could you please check and confirm to us or affirm that the policy on prohibiting energy drinks is still being followed?
Yes, I may.
In the schools?
Mr. Heineman, I will do that.
If I may, we have Linda, who's on my team. She's my district liaison. She also oversees anything that
is to make sure it is limited to the 5 minutes and not overstepping those minutes. Some of them will keep on going and going and going, and I had my phone and it rang and Ms. Jeff jumped a couple times. But anyway, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manini. Nana?
Well, thank you. I believe that the public comment is very important. We are an elected board representing our constituents, and even more so, especially the parents. I think it's very important that they have opportunity to give input, and it's difficult enough the way it is to get full input from the public and various constituent groups, all the way from parents to private sector businesses to students. So that is one of the few ways we can at least solicit, and I will make a side comment on that. For instance, I know that Mr. Mitchell has been much better at getting out to his school and chapter areas than I have. So he's getting some input. I have been deficient in that regard. So the public comment is one time when we can hear ideas and concerns from people. I recognize that there are a small number of people who come sometimes a fair number of times, and others who never come, but if we don't keep the door open, then they never will. I, as a person who used to come and make a few public comments and might again, I know it's frustrating to come and wait for 3-4 hours till the executive session is over and not know how long it'll be, and then sit there so that you can make a comment afterwards. I do favor what the board did, is to moving it up at the front. Even though then, you know, sometimes it may be short, like tonight it might be longer, and we have other people on the agenda and they have to wait, not knowing how long public comments will be, but it's shorter usually than somebody having to wait to the end. But I think it's essential that we keep that door open and that we send the signal to people that we do welcome their comments. Even though most people, I wish, would take more advantage of it, and we hear, you know, often from a handful of people, but they're caring enough to come. At least they're doing it. So I certainly hope the board will continue to keep that, because we're aware, I think, as a board, that under state Open Meetings Act laws and the rules, you don't have to, the board does not even have to have public comment. But I think if you don't have it, that sends the wrong signal. So I think we certainly need to say that we welcome people's input.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Chair.
I do agree with my colleagues. I know that as a former state representative, I used to come to several of your school board meetings and also made public comments as well. And I think it's real viable. I think it's really needed. And I really do think that we do have to give that feedback as well, especially like in my situation, I think I've been singly targeted, and there's no way for me to address those issues, but it's always being put in the paper, and so, you know, there's really no way that I could have my say-so in some of those concerns that have been brought up, which really has nothing to do with what we do here as a school board member. I think that it has just reflected around my residency rather than really focusing on what the real issues are regarding our students. And I think that there have been parents that have addressed that. And so I think that it is viable, and I think that as board members, we are elected, and we do need to hear the concerns from our communities and from parents and even from students. And I really would like to encourage students to come up here to express their concerns as well. So that way we could nail a lot of these issues and address those issues, and have even our superintendent address those issues and those concerns. So that way we can nip it and take care of, you know, those situations. And so I really think that this is really needed. It's good that we agree on this, and I think that I'm still caught in the middle on this part here, if we should have it at the beginning or if we should have it at the end, because I have seen parents coming all the way out from Navajo, New Mexico, and that's a long trip for them, you know. And so my concern for them is in the evenings when they have to travel back, And sometimes we're here so late, and their distance is, further than ours. And I wish that I had individuals, like parents that could easily come out from Whitehorse Lake, and that's another rural area, and it's hard for them to come all the way out from there as well. And so I think we need to really try to do that outreach for those rural communities as well, so that they could address those concerns. And another recommendation is, if we could have maybe the administration give us an opportunity to have laptops, and maybe we can communicate with those parents in those rural communities to address their concerns as well, because I know a lot of them don't have a viable transportation to come out here, or even funds for gas to come out here. And so, that's one of the recommendations that I would suggest is, getting these particular laptops, so that we can address those concerns from those rural community members as well, and the students. So thank you.
I have a question. I don't know if I'm going to open a can of worms here, but I know when I'm taking a webinar, sometimes there's the presentations happening, and down at the bottom or on the side somewhere, there's a place that if we have a question during the webinar, that parents or the attendees can type in a question. Could that be done with our technology, that they can send in? I mean, we don't have to answer it right there, but maybe we can see their questions of what they would like to ask, and then maybe we can review those questions, because they can't make it to the boardroom meetings, but maybe there's a question that they really need to get a feedback from.
There's probably, Madam President and School Board, there's probably different ways to handle that. That might take some further discussion, and also I would strongly, on this particular topic, recommend legal counsel that you don't have yet, because there may be some issues with that. You want to make sure that it's clean as possible, so that you're following the law and not opening yourself up at the district for any liability, depending on what is said or what is projected. But also, and I understand the importance in wanting to respond to comments, but there are also some legal ramifications for that also. For example, if a person comes to the podium and starts talking about personnel, and then you respond to that, then you open yourself up for potential problems. Let's put it that way. And so I would just, when you get a chance, when their legal services is secured, this would be a great topic to have a discussion with, because you want to be really careful about how you conduct public comments, so you do it appropriately and efficiently, and again, make sure that it's open and transparent to the public.
Madam Chair, I'm glad you brought that out, brought that up, Mr. Hyatt, because I really think that when it comes to personnel, especially individuals attacking school board members, I think that's a whole different issue that shouldn't even be addressed during the public comment, especially when it has to deal with the issues residing with the district itself, regarding students, regarding anything like discrimination or whatever that we need to address. I think that should be really separate. So, thank you.
Madam President, I really like where the public comment is at this point. And as far as being able to respond or to debate any of it, there's been several times where I was just wanting to just come out and say and debate some of the public comment as they were speaking. But in order for that to happen, or not, to me, it shouldn't happen, because it probably would just end up in a big argument anyway. So I think it's better off that we sit and listen to the concerns of our constituents and our people, and then try and have it addressed at a different time through our administration.
Mr. Hideman?
I'd like to add a comment. We have, often I think individually, I'm making an assumption here, but we do hear public comments, and then we want to respond inside, and we know we can't. We can't discuss it with the people under the legal limitations, because it's not an item. They may bring up something that's not on the agenda, and that's why we are not prohibited to treat it as an agenda item for discussion. I think that the board would do well, I'm going to make a very specific suggestion or idea here. I think the board would do well to hold periodic open public forums that are not for action but are for discussion with the public. And I think the board would do very well to schedule 2 next week. One perhaps on Tuesday and one on Wednesday, one here in town and say one in Crown Point, or vice versa. Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday, or Tuesday and Thursday, depending on people's schedules. Because I think there are a lot of information, well, not so much, but very important information that has gone out to people that raises questions and concerns, legitimate concerns. One key one being the matter of the PED, saying that the school board is done, doing this and that, and that the PED is threatening to even remove the school board. I mean, that's what's been reported. Well, the PED did give us very specific directives or instructions, and it is serious when the PED does that because they have the power to do it. They have the power to remove a local school board. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, but they're doing that based on certain information that they have not always verified. And the public hasn't heard the board's input and information on that. Also, like we say with the public input things, we don't get to respond and discuss and dig deeper into people's ideas, even when they're positive, constructive ideas. And I think if the board held a couple public meetings at this point to share information about various things, and perhaps in cooperation with the administration, like the budget developments right now with the concerns in New Mexico. We discussed that sometimes to an extent in the meeting, but I think if we had a session with certain general topics that we think might be able to share information to people, and then also open it up to their ideas and further questions, and put a time limit on it so we can kind of move like we did in the IEC meeting, ones where we said, a certain amount of time on the agenda, and if it's taking too long, we've still got other things to get through, and we can put it off to another meeting. But I think the board would do very well to help to do that, to be able to get some more information out to people and allow them to question and ask for clarifications of what, and I'm hoping they would feel more welcome to come and do that than in our meetings under the current format. And then we're free to visit and share ideas, and I think it would be constructive. And I'm going to say directly that I think one good reason to do it next week is I'm reading some of the comments of board candidates that are in the paper. And sometimes there's some things stated, I think, by the candidates for the board vacancies where it looks to me they don't have full information. They're not making, I'm not saying they're bad statements, they may be legitimate questions and ideas, concerns they're raising, but they don't, they're saying, they're going to look into this, or they don't know. And I think if we could do that for the sake of the public, clarify and expand on the information they have for general purposes, and also as they look at what candidates say, and for the candidates themselves, hopefully they could come if they wanted to, and again get information and ask questions. But that would, I would say that would be a constructive move. The PED itself has encouraged us to put out more information to the public, to the media, meet with the mayor, meet with whoever to get word out. Well, I think that would be a general way to try to dispense and share and make information available. That's my thinking of that.
Okay, Mr. Hitter. I do like to say, with the public comment part, I do like the way administration has informed the board. If there's been some public comments made, each one of them has been looked into, addressed, and we do get that report from administration. There were some big concerns, and we got them through our either board updates or board reports. So I would like to see that continue, because I know sometimes I think in the past, the comments were made and then it just kind of died. And I think we need to help ease that parent or community member that's coming up with their concerns. I know most of the time it's probably resolved before then, but having that feedback and follow-up does really help and ease the mind of the public commenter that's coming up. Well, like I said, thank you. I really value my colleagues, all of you guys' input on this topic, and that's why I put it on there. I know it's just a discussion, but I would like to have the same discussion with the board members that will be joining us also. So I just like to thank you all. Yeah. Okay, moving on to old business. Everything's approval of acting superintendent's contract. Another big headliner. Board members, I know that you guys all received this, and I'm sure you reviewed it. Is there any questions?
Madam President?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Jeff?
The only thing that I have to comment on that is I know that the election is coming February 7th, and I think that we could, at least for now, how would I put this? My recommendation is to at least, have our superintendent be the acting until we get the individuals coming in, and then from there, really put the pieces together is what my recommendation would be.
Understand about the new election, yes, or the election coming up. Any other recommendations by the board?
Madam President, that'll put this comment back until March. And I think it needs to be acted upon before that.
Ms. Jeff, are you saying to approve it tonight? Or can you
What I'm saying is
clarify?
maybe we can extend it until, we can approve it now to extend until February. Let's see, when is the election? 7th?
The board won't be on until the 6th of March.
Maybe until the next school board meeting, which would be in March. Because what my concern is that when we get the newly elected school board members, because Mr. Hennerman and Mr. Manini are not returning, and I truly respect both for their input as well as my colleagues, and then I'm up for election, and so my concern is if we do this contract, and I might be putting the cart before the horse, but once the individuals come in, then we're going to have to start all over again if they feel that they want to advertise this. So that's really where I'm getting at is I just think that we could extend this for Mr. Hyatt until March 6th.
Mrs. Jeff, I just remembered something that I would really like to express to the board that needs to be talked about in executive session. So I would like them to come back to this after we exit out of executive session.
Okay.
Do you need a motion for that? Therefore, I move that this be talked about after the executive session. Motion.
Yes, Mr. Manini, you're, no. I just want to move this item to the after executive session. Do we need a motion for that? We're going to be changing the agenda. Would it be
Table
that
it or
motion party?
amend the agenda?
Yeah, because on an executive session, we have in here limited matters on contract of acting superintendent. And then come back out. Okay, let's do that.
Before we take that motion, I also think that the item number C, approval of the revised Open Meetings Act resolution, also needs to go into executive.
I'm sorry, which one?
I'm sorry, on old business.
That one
We can't.
be-
Item C?
That one can't go into executive session.
Oh, okay,
open meeting.
okay.
We,
Because I don't know.
okay. Yeah, we're just,
Okay.
okay, well, let's take our secretary's suggestion then and go into executive session, discuss these two items, and then exit out, and then we'll continue on with 7A and the agenda.
Okay.
Right, Joan? Did I? Okay. So I need a motion to enter into executive session.
Okay, motion to enter into executive session to discuss the superintendent's contract, acting superintendent's contract,
And personnel
and
report.
personnel report.
Madam President,
8.
before you vote, I don't favor that. I think we've got people waiting for various items here. I would prefer to keep the executive session at the end and then come out as usual. And if we take action on this item, then we do that when we come out of executive session. But that, well, that's already on the agenda, as noted, on limited personnel matters on contract for acting superintendent, already there. We can come out and act on what we did in executive session, right?
But we're. No,
I think
because
you're right,
we're-
Mr. Henry.
If we table or do not act on 7A, it still comes
Until
up
after
again under
executive session?
Session, we can still act on it.
Mr.
That would
Manini?
be my
Yeah,
understanding.
yes, that is correct, as I agree, and therefore I either rescind my motion and go with Mr. Huneman to table this item until after the executive session. Is that possible, Ms. Nez?
Just don't discuss it, just go on to the next item.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Going to old business B, approval of school climate survey. Mr. Hideman.
We had discussed earlier the idea of having the district conduct a school climate survey. I still favor that, but I want to share with you the conversation and recommendations from Dr. Hugh Prather. And did I give you all my copies? I thought I had one left here. But those are just the notes that I want to.
I'll look at Priscilla's.
I did visit with him about, as I mentioned before, his name. He's a person who does training for individual school districts, but also for NIMSBA, for State School Board Association. And when I first got on the board, and we're required to attend and participate in a certain number of hours of training, and it comes in the form of conferences, but also live streamed training over the internet. and he conducts and coordinates, facilitates some of those trainings. I viewed, participated in several of those, and so these are the notes and where it leads for now. He does, with Prather Consulting, do school climate surveys, but he also does school board trainings on superintendent evaluations and on superintendent searches. He was a superintendent for 12 plus years. He's done board training for 10 years. And one of the things I did not realize is that he offers some no-cost training modules to school boards. He does live 1-hour sessions on things like superintendent evaluation and superintendent selection. And he's available to do that for us at a no-cost basis. It's live. In other words, you're still interacting with him, hearing from him, and asking questions and so on. And what he recommended when we talked about the school climate survey was that it would be better not to do it immediately, since we're facing the decision about a superintendent search and whether to do it. The board does not have to do a search for next year. The board does not have to conduct a superintendent search. The board is free to select a superintendent without a search, even continuing the present or acting superintendent. But he thought in terms of timing, it would be better for the board to make its decision regarding superintendent search, which is also on the agenda. And if we're going to do a search, that as we plan that, we get that settled, and then we do the school climate survey after that, but before that person actually starts, so that the information, that way we've got the information as a groundwork or a base for the new administration if there's a change or even an ongoing one. So in terms of timing, he would say, plan your superintendent search. When you've got that done, then do your climate survey so it's available, and then it's not only for immediate use, but as a baseline for continued use, meaning, as I mentioned, like with Los Alamos, they're in their the third year of their climate survey. So you've got the data from 1 year, then you do it a second year, and you see if there are trends or changes, and the third year, then you see which direction things are going. So as you can see then, on number 2, if the board would want to hire an outside consultant to conduct or help set up a superintendent search, this should be part of the board's plan, and then the plan should identify the consultant's role and the board's role in the search and selection process. Then the climate survey can be done before new or permanent superintendent appointment starts. And then he just mentions that he does use SurveyMonkey Level 2, and the district uses SurveyMonkey already. The budget survey thing that's just out there right now is using SurveyMonkey. And what Dr. Prather would do if the district wants to go ahead with a climate survey, at that point he would, submit a proposal. He didn't stay an exact price because it depends on what we say we want. And in your handouts this evening, you can have a survey that has different parts for staff, for parents, for teachers, for students, and depending on the extent and the breadth of the survey, that can affect costs. But he says he usually doesn't. It's usually not over 10 or 12,000 when he does a district-wide thing. And I have no idea what to say that's a lot or a little, because I don't know anything to compare it with. But in other words, it's an amount that's at least he gives a little idea of what his common range is when he works with a district. So I present that to you. My conclusion is then we should not try to implement or have the administration implement a climate survey immediately, but wait until we know what we're doing with the superintendency. And then, in the meantime, I think it would be great, knowing his general experience, to take him up on the fact that he offers free training session. And generally, it's about an hour's package, he says, and then depending on what discussion, it's not like the clock cuts it off, but it's a package that's pre-done that he does. It's kind of a set routine for the most part, and so I think we might as well, I mean, if we can, we should take him up on it and get the hour training from him on the ideas for superintendent search, and then see where the board goes from there. So I'm not asking then, not proposing any action on the school climate survey at this point again.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I really like this concept. I want to thank Lynn for bringing this up, because this was one of the, when we attended the school board, the New Mexico School Board Association meeting in Albuquerque, I had sat in with the, one of the trainings dealing with the superintendent's evaluation. And the individual that spoke there used to also be a superintendent himself for Berlin. And I like this no cost, and the individual willing to sit down with us and go over this. I think it's a good start, because it will also help alleviate a lot of the communication, and it will also bring the superintendent and the school board members together, and that we can work together every 45 days or whatever need be, 60 days. And that collaboration is so needed, because, you know, in the past, you know, it was so divided. And so I support this. So, you know, that's really my recommendation as well. Thank you.
Any other comments?
So, let's see.
So, Mr. Hitterman, this is not an action item at this point? No. Okay.
Though it has action on there?
Yeah. We
But I like to implement this, because I know that we've discussed it several times, and I still would like to take action on this item.
I think what Mr. Hitterman is saying, that is, you know, after talking with Mr. Prather, that he is saying that we need, it's probably best that we do the climate,
okay.
school climate until after
Okay,
we decide what we're doing with
That's
superintendent.
right. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that.
And if I may add, I mean, I guess we could plan to go ahead with it and so on, and see how the timing works out in terms of the superintendent process, but I think there's time for that yet. The other thing is, if the board wants to, you know, have him provide that no-cost training, I think we could do that anytime. We could do it now. We could do it even in between meetings, because that's a matter of scheduling a meeting with him. What I'm getting at is, because that is not specifically on the agenda, I think it's a type of item that does not need to be on the agenda, because it's a matter of scheduling a meeting, and that we're free to do any time in any fashion. So if the board would, you know, want to commit to that at this point, in terms of working on a date, and have that worked out through Mr. Hyatt or even myself, I mean, I think we could, I think the board needs to decide, say, if we want to take advantage of one or both of those kinds of training, and then, if so, then finding a date between the board and his schedule. And I presume that could, again, be day or evening, maybe daytime. I don't know. I didn't visit with him about whether it matters.
Madam President?
Yes.
I think that, Mr. Hinderman, if you could maybe find some dates and time, and then maybe you can email that, and have Mr. Hyatt follow up on that with us, because I'd like to see and listen in on that as well. So thank you.
Since it is an action item, I do believe we do need to table it until we're ready to put it back on the agenda.
Madam President?
Mr. Manini?
I believe that's a great idea, because I think that if you're going to do a search, I think the new board members need to be in touch with this item also. So therefore, I'd like to motion to table this item.
Thank you, Mr. Manini. There's a motion on the floor to table it. Roll call, please.
Ms. Jeff,
Yes.
Mr. Heineman,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes. Thank you, Lynn, for the information. This is something we will definitely need. Next, we have the approval of the revised Open Meetings Act resolution. Again, board members, I did make the changes. I did email them, and I saw that Mr. Hyatt emailed them out to all board members. If you guys are still reviewing it, I don't know what your wishes are on.
Madam President,
Yes.
I think we had a couple of weeks to review that, and so I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised Open Meetings Act resolution.
Thank you, Mrs. Jeff, for your motion. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Manini,
Checking my email again. I'd pass it this time and come back to me, please.
Mr. Heineman, Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes. Mr. Manini?
Yes.
Mr. Manini.
Yes, ma'am.
We're voting on the Open Meetings Act revision, sir?
Well, I'll abstain in case you said something that would have changed my mind, but I didn't have any problems with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I, 8I, am I correct? Okay. Approval of the MOA between Gallup McKinley County Schools and McHughes for the retention addendum. This is an action item.
Madam President, I
Yes.
say a few things. Again, board members, as you know, I've reached out to each of you to answer any questions that you might have regarding the agenda in this item. I also sent you some information by email. As you know, as I mentioned in my email to you, we did budget for this last spring as a school board and an administration in it was a board meeting that we had in Albuquerque at one of the hotels. And it seems a little odd that the state is struggling financially, and here we are giving a retention addenda. But I want to assure you that our operational funds are in a very good position at this point due to impact aid payments, along with better efficiency in the district with regard to funds. We feel very confident, and that's why I approached and got insight from some of the board members regarding this item, and I would recommend its approval for the benefit of our employees who have not had raises or who have not had increases in any form or fashion like other districts have in the past.
Madam President?
Mr. Manini.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Hyde, for giving us this information. I thank you about the provisions that you have put in this, whether when they leave the district or move on, that the pay will come back to us. I think that's an excellent idea because we had a great turnover this past year where we had an incentives for those personnel, and they took off with our money. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Mr. Manini, thank you for your motion. Any other questions?
Yes, Madam President,
Yes.
I know that Mr. Hyatt did ask us if we had any concerns and questions, and I know that I have never really addressed anything, but I know that I'm willing to support this, and I also wanted to ensure that even the custodian and the cooks in them are also getting this raise as well, because it is so needed that they too are part of this initiative.
Madam President, Mrs. Jeff, absolutely. Matter of fact, I believe that most, as you notice, there's a minimum on that of 1,000 for 8-hour employees. And so that is it's not a raise, it's a one-time addenda, so this is a one-time thing. And so I just want to clarify that, but also assure you that this is for all employees who currently work in the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. And then another thing that I want to also bring up is two concerns. I want to make sure that this came from the school board members. I don't want McFews to put out there and take credit for this. And I also want to thank Mr. Hyatt for bringing this issue up. Another thing that I also want to address too is that with receiving phone calls as well as texts, reading the McFews website, I think that you kind of need to settle down by saying that we are a corrupt school board and that we're out of touch. And I think that we need to collaborate and we need to work together, and that we are doing this for the district. So I would really recommend that, Mr. Bernard, that you guys start bashing us and to start working with us. So that is my recommendation. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Again, board members, I would like to also comment that, this is something that I'm very thankful that we continue to have our administration budget these finances, and with the collaboration of the board, that that these funds are going to our employees that are in need, and something that's well deserved. We hear a lot of them struggling in different areas of their lives, and I think this is just something that we can continue to give them positive reinforcements that we are a district that continues, even though it's not published anywhere, that we continue to look in the best interests of our staff and parents and our students. And I know if our staff is well, and we have these kind of addendums for them, that their job performance and the atmosphere, the climate in their jobs and job sites will be a lot better. And I'm very thankful for them that Giovanna is always doing well on our budget, and even with administration and with our board that continues to look at the budget and examine it even more. I'm very thankful that we do have a working relationship with the board, and that you guys are very active with the budget and continuing to review all the aspects of it. So thank you very much for this. I am too in favor, yes.
I'd like to make one comment. I have one question though first. I don't know if we ever received, I would like to know just what the projected total amount of this is. I don't know if that was ever stated.
Madam President, Giovanna, can you pull that up? It is really close to 3 million. It's within, I think, 100,000 of that, if I remember right. So that's what we budgeted, was approximately 3 million, and that's what it came out to. So
Okay.
we tried to maximize that.
Okay, and you might have told us that. I apologize if I didn't
I
remember.
did not, so I apologize.
Okay. The other comment I'd like to make is, I do wish that the spread were not quite as wide, but this is more equitable, closer than the last time we were able to do this one-time addenda, and so I will support it. I just think we still quite a spread between the lower amount and what the already higher paid employees, highest paid employees would get on this, but it's there is reason, I think, to reward loyalty, longevity, people who have been loyal and worked with the district longer, and that's reflects some of that. And I appreciate the base, that there's a minimum, because even though the lower salary people can work equally hard. So I think it starts to equalize that.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. McKinley.
I would just like to say that, I really appreciate the information that we got in our board packet, as well as the information shared from interim superintendent Mr. Mike Hyatt for contacting us and keeping us updated on all that was being done with the negotiation. As Mr. Hindeman said, he did talk about the spread. I have mentioned the spread several times, but then when I'm sit down and actually go over the spread and discuss how it actually works, it all works out to where it is even, and it does make sense. But I do want to say that, there are many times when I run into a lot of our employees of Gallup McKinley County, and they do stop me, grocery store or wherever, and they talk and we visit, and at the end they always say, thank you guys for all the work that you do, and we appreciate you. And then I always turn around and say, no, it's the other way around here. We appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you do to ensure that our children are getting what they get. So at this time, I do think that our employees are so well in deservance of this one-time
Retention addenda. Sorry.
Yeah. But I'm glad that this also shows that as a district we're sitting good. Thank you.
Madam President, members
Yes,
of the board,
Giovanna.
Mr. Hyatt. So the inquiry was kind of the exact figure, including estimated taxes associated with paying this out. It will be approximately $3,013,000. That will remain a variable number until January 17th, as stipulated as part of the agreement. That will be the official cutoff date, and I will calculate the official number at that time based upon the hires.
Thank you.
So, roll call, please.
Ms. Jeff,
Yes.
Mr. Heineman,
Yes?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation Research Study requested for the use of school nurse strategies to reduce LGBTQ adolescent suicide at 3 GMCS high schools.
Madam President, I'll turn the time over to Dr. White for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, and board members. I'm going to turn the time over to Janie Lee Hall and the folks from UNM. They will explain the research and all and they can answer the questions that you may have.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Mr. Hyatt. I'm Janie Lee Hall, and I am actually a former public health employee here in the state and out of McKinley County. I'm retired from that job over the summer and am now working with the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. And I'd like to now turn the mic over to Dr. Katie Wilging, who is filling in for Dr. Ramos. Dr. Wilging and Ramos are the two co-PIs of this study. And so thank you.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. And yes, my name is Katie Wilging. I am the director of the Behavioral Health Research Center of the Southwest, which is a center of the Pacific Institute for Research and Evaluation. So when you have the papers in front of you, just to be clear. And this is a joint project that we're doing with Dr. Mary Ramos from the Department of Pediatrics at University of New Mexico. And it also includes investigators from the Child and Adolescent Research Center at University of San Diego. This is a project funded by the National Institutes of Health, and our goal is to recruit 40 high schools in New Mexico that want to participate in an implementation initiative to improve school climate and culture for students who might identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning. And the goal is to work with school nurses and local groups of stakeholders to bring up 6 strategies that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says will help reduce suicide risks, not just for these LGBTQ students, but will have a positive spillover effect on all students in high schools. These are 6 strategies that have an evidence base before them. They've been shown to work in a variety of settings. They include creating safe spaces. You might be familiar with the concept of a safe zone, or a GSA. These are spaces that LGBTQ students could turn to and feel like they can get support from other students and other faculty. It includes looking at school bullying and harassment policies to make sure they're inclusive of this population, to be able to make referrals to medical providers within the community as well as behavioral health providers in the community who have some knowledge about LGBTQ issues, to work with staff in helping them address their own training needs, and to also work on enhancing school educational health education curricula so that it also is inclusive of LGBTQ students. And what our goal is to really work with local teams led by the school nurse to figure out where schools are at with these strategies, and then to create action plans where they can get these strategies in place or maybe strengthen what's already happening in the school. It doesn't mean we're asking schools to do all 6 of these strategies at once. It really depends on where the school is at. We are providing supports to schools to implement these strategies. But I should note it's 40 schools we're recruiting, 20 that will be in the experimental condition, 20 in a control condition. Those in the control condition get all these supports at a later date. But the supports really include coaching from one of you have your own local coach, Janie Lee. We also have well-respected trainers from the Albuquerque and Santa Fe areas that will be working with schools to figure out ways to get these strategies in place and to provide technical assistance and to also bring training to schools. For those nurses and their local stakeholder teams, we're going to be offering webinars on a variety of topics that aren't just LGBTQ related, but have to do with leadership, which have to do with program planning, which have to do with bullying and harassment issues more broadly, as well as creating a safer school environment. So it's not just specific to one population. The team of stakeholders we're thinking of could include educators, school counselors. It's really who you in the school want to include. So we're really asking your permission to be able to go talk with the nurses and talk with administrators at the school to see if they want to participate in this, and to really explain what the participation would be, and then if they did want to participate, to be able to enroll them in the study. And for this study, we're not asking to include students. Our data will really come from the Youth Risk Resilience Survey that the state does. We're just going to be working with adults pretty much, and it would entail doing yearly interviews and a focus group, yearly interviews with an administrator and the school nurse, as well as a focus group with the local stakeholder team. And I just want to impress upon you why we're doing this study, and it really has to do with the pretty startling disparities that LGBTQ kids face in this state. We have data from the 2015 YRRS survey that indicates that 16% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual students were 16% endorsed missing school because they didn't feel safe, versus 6% of heterosexual kids. 32% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids reported being bullied on school property, compared to 16% of straight kids. When we look at their drug use rates and their drinking rates, 41% are likely to currently use alcohol versus 24% of heterosexual kids. Marijuana use rates are also high, 42% versus 23%. And these disparities go to other substances. And these substance use disparities are very much related to mental health disparities. So in this state, 60% of lesbian, gay, bisexual students said they felt sad or depressed in the past year, compared to 28% of heterosexual kids. 29% attempted suicide versus 7%. And I can give you all these statistics, but attempting suicide was 11% versus 2%. So the goal of this study is really to reduce these disparities, and we think by doing so, by working with this very marginalized population, we will be making a difference for other students' lives. And I also want to add that these disparities are probably intensified for kids who identify as transgender. We just do not collect the data at the state level about this population. And this is, and we have received support from the Navajo Nation Human Research Review Board to pursue this research. So I think a letter was attached. And we also have support from DOH and from PED. Thank you so much. Incentives, yes, sorry. So the incentive for the nurses that participate, you get webinars, and they all come with CEUs. The same thing for the local stakeholder teams. So if you had a social worker or a counselor or somebody who needs medical education credits, they would be eligible for those credits, those continuing education credits. For everybody who participates in a data collection event, they get $50 for their participation. And the schools that participate also get $500 annual stipend per year. And I think we were directed to work with the board to make those donations. So, and we also send the school nurses to the statewide School Nurse Association conference, where they're also eligible for CEUs, and we pay their expenses. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Jamie, also thank you. Mr. Manini?
Yes. In the first part of our item in the pink slip, it says that we're going to be, has 3 schools, Yavapai, Maramir, and Central. But yet, on a couple pages later, it says the 3 schools, and it only means Yavapai and Maramira. What happened to Central?
I think what happened between the time we wrote our application and now, we learned that Central hadn't participated in the Youth Risk Resiliency Survey, which we're using to look at the outcome measures. So that's the reason.
So you're just the 2 schools in the district. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why it wasn't continued in the outlying areas? Crown Point, Tohatchee, and so forth?
We really actually wanted to do a full-scale project on the Navajo Nation, and when we received our funding, they cut it by almost 20%, and and we just didn't have the funds to proceed in that area. But we are working with our advisory committee to figure out how we can broaden our our study and apply for a supplement to actually do work specific to Navajo Nation.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Jeff?
Thank you for your presentation. I kind of missed some of it, but I have two questions. One of them is, have you done an outreach, maybe even Paulette can answer this, with the Indian House Services, like for Gallup Indian Hospital, Crown Point Indian Hospital?
We haven't. In previous studies we have, because we have studied LGBTQ issues more broadly, and we've tried to develop interventions that do include those voices. But this was really focused on educational settings. What we hope to happen is if a local stakeholder team wanted to be able to provide training to people in those facilities to make them, let's say, more sensitive when they're dealing with that population, we would help provide the resources to do that kind of training. We would support the outreach that they wanted to do to those other groups of providers who work with that population. But for this, we were really targeting, because it's really an implementation study about making school climate and cultures more supportive of this population.
And Madam President, another question I have is, I know that there was a bill some time ago, I'm assuming maybe it was about 6 years ago, and I know that Senator Linda Lovejoy sponsored that bill, and it had to do with suicide prevention. And so I don't know if that program is still funded. I don't know if there was a sunset clause on that, if there's still funding that's still there, because I know that it was a big range of either education, intervention. And so I think that's another key element that maybe you can also look into, and to see how you could utilize those funds. Because I say this because I know at that time when she introduced this legislation, we had some suicide that had taken place within the Crown Point and the Theru area. And so because of that, that was a reason why she went ahead and introduced such legislation. And so, you know, I really think that these rural communities, I think that's a really huge outreach, and it's so needed in those areas, because I do come from a family in my rural community of Crown Point, and have relatives that reside on the Navajo Reservation through Mariano Lake, Smith Lake, Crown Point, Standing Rock, and then you go into Cuba, you go into Whitehorse Lake, Torreon, and a lot of them are homosexual and lesbians, and so, or gays, and so, and transgender, and so I know that they've been bullied, and they have, you know, and are going through a lot of mental issues because of that. And so I think it's real viable. I think it's really needed, and and I think that's another reason why a lot of them drop out of high school, is because, you know, it's a huge problem.
And Madam President and members of the board, and that's what the research literature shows. It's those kind of experiences that lead people to miss school, to perform not at their academic best, and can lead to those other adverse disparities that I talked about. And this project at least does provide nurses for the people who are on these local resource teams, and to the nurses in suicide prevention specifically. And one of the co-investigator who wanted to be here tonight but was taken ill, Dr. Ramos, she's actually been involved in a lot of the suicide prevention initiatives statewide. So she's a great asset that we bring to the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Yes, board members. This is, I don't know if all you board members know, but this is the other hat that I wear is for my community of Theru. I oversee a community center that we deal with a lot of suicide prevention and even the postvention for our youth in our area. And but I do have a couple of questions. I know that I had the same question as Mr. Manini had, because I saw 3 and then 2 on one page. But I would really like to encourage you not to think of one of our rural schools. I think that I know that Gallup Central didn't do the resilience survey, but maybe one of the other schools in the area, the rural area, did their surveys. I don't know if these are set in stone already for the funding or the grant, but I would really encourage your program to go out into one of the rural schools. I think it is needed out there as much as it is in the city limits of Gallup, and that's one of our outcries of our communities when we're out in our rural areas is Gallup gets it all, you know, and we're trying to change that to where there are things that the district has done to improve that, but we just want to keep that momentum going, that, you know, we would like to have these kind of programs into our rural schools. The other question I had was, I know that with this research that's completed, will that data be shared back with the school district, or, you know, I don't know what report or whatever you're going to be submitting at the end of your this program? Could you provide those back to the board at that time, or school district?
Madam President, our intention is to create annual feedback reports for the schools based on their local data, but those reports are just for those schools or for the district, but nobody else's eyes. So one thing I really do want to impress, like, we want to provide feedback to help with planning. So we will provide tools so folks can kind of assess where they are with these strategies, and then, you know, we'll put them into user-friendly feedback reports. But when it comes to actually also sharing, you know, the findings from the study, everything's more or less an aggregate, and it's not going to be reported at the district level to other people, but, you know, the local schools are going to have access to that information. And we're not going to be comparing individual schools against one another.
And then I think I'm sure that what you said about the donation, because that was also a question. I saw the $50 and the $500, and I was like, oh, okay, how are we going to address that? But I think that administration already took care of that part. The last question I have is, our district has a bullying and suicide prevention structured in it. Will this at any way disrupt any of those two policies or programs that we have in our district?
Madam President, I did not see any conflict. Dr. White, her and I have not discussed that specifically, but I'd like her to chime in if she has any additional information.
Madam President, but members of the board, I think our current bullying policy, bullying harassment policy, is good, and I think on this study and the results that they find will only enhance what we're doing and help us steer on certain topics. And again, the study is to evaluate the methods that the school nurses will be using. It's not necessarily our kids, but this can be generalized to how we work with other adults who help our kids. So I can see it enhancing what we have.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hanneman.
Madam President, I noticed in the first page, not the one from Navajo Nation, but describing the study, it says that suicide is the third leading cause of death for youths aged 12 to 18 years in the U.S. And we know that the suicide rate compared to national average for Native youth across the U.S. is also significantly higher than for non-Native youth. I guess I'm in one way wishing this study were addressed that all youth, there's a sentence in here which I would reverse just to let you know. It says, when we make schools safer for LGBTQ youth, we make schools safer for all students. I don't disagree with that, but I think you can reverse it and say, if we make schools safer for all students, then we make it also safer for LGBT. So it works together. And the reason I say that is because knowing that I don't know what our suicide statistics are in our district or in our area. We've been aware, we've discussed even as a board last year the concern about the Theroux area and the happenings there. But I'm wondering, I guess, in those terms, what is prompting this particular study? And is there any particular local thing that triggered this, or it's a general interest because of national statistics, and then there's grant money available? So I'm just wondering what's behind this. I think suicide prevention is always, you can't argue with. You want to prevent that, and no matter how it applies. But
So, Madam President, members of the board, it really was the Youth Risk Resiliency Survey across the board for kids in New Mexico. We're now looking at the data set ourselves to look at the intersection of different identities. For example, if a kid is lesbian, gay, and bisexual, and also identifies as Native American, are they at greater risk? But we can say in this state that particular population, sexual and gender minorities, regardless of ethnicity, are at a much higher rate of suicidal ideation and suicidal behaviors than most other kids in the state. And so that's really the justification why school nurses actually started to work with Dr. Ramos to say, we are noticing something happening. We need more skills. We need better expertise. We need to know where we can turn so we can start working with this population. And what we're trying to do is also make our trainings broad enough so it'll be able to capture, the broader student diversity, but yet still recognize that these kids, for a variety of reasons, do have an elevated risk. And that's really the principal motivation.
And I'm aware of what Dr. White said in terms of looking at the methods we use, not just at the kids. But I want to point out something else that's stated here, and it says incorporating specific information into the health education curriculum. I think curriculum is something that is not up to a grant program. That's a board oversight responsibility. So I think that when you're ready to do that, I think that tentative curriculum should be shared with the board. And I say that frankly because there are obviously in our society different views of this whole phenomena and so on. And one time we'll say LGBT community. I'm not always sure what makes people a community. But then we also use terms like gender dysphoria and confusion and so on. And so there's different things on different levels that operate there. And if we're going to put stuff into the curriculum, I'm just saying I think the board should know what's planned there.
So Madam President, members of the board, our goal is to work with these local stakeholder teams so they can then work with their board or whatever their local process is to consider, we can provide samples of curricula. We can make suggestions, but it's not, the research team doesn't actually advocate, that schools do things a particular way or violate any policies. So that would be kind of part of the action plan if the school decides to pursue changes in health education curricula, and that they would come to you then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, just real quick.
Yes.
I know it's going to be a challenge for you, because I know that with the federal and state, there's a lot of confidentiality, when it comes to a lot of these individuals, because I know that even with IHS, they do have their own statistics. And I know that the state has their own statistics, and I'm pretty sure that Navajo Nation has their own statistics. And I know that the thing that's challenging is sharing those statistics because of the confidentiality. So I'm hoping that by implementing this and putting it out there at the schools, that that collaboration is there with all the parties to ensure that what you're trying to accomplish also accomplishes the others as well. So I just wanted to make that point. So thank you. So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do like to make a motion to approve this item.
Thank you, Ms. Jeff. Roll call?
Mr. Manini,
Yes.
Mr. Heeneman,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt, can I ask her to introduce the other two individuals? I don't know if you already introduced them that are with you. Are they? Yes. I forgot to mention that.
Good evening. I'm Natalie Lovato. I'm the nurse coordinator for Gallup McKinley County Schools. I have Susan Palanchak, who is the nurse for Mayamira, and I have Anna Chavez, who is the nurse for Gallup High.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for that, Sandra. Moving on to K, approval of 2016-17 Gallup McKinley County IPP. I think, board members, the only real question I had with this, with Mr. Hyatt, when we kind of discussed this, was if it was reviewed by the IEC and they had their input. And as we heard this afternoon, or this evening by Mrs. Yazzie, that it was. So that was my only comment back on this, and I do see the changes that were implemented.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't want to beat the horse to death here, but I think that with the collaboration that took place with all the individuals, the stakeholders, I think that we should go ahead and I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yes.
I have two questions. Throughout the document in red, it says Department of Education, and I heard a little of that discussion, I think, in IEC meeting, but I don't remember if that was, are these additions in terms of who shall be involved and consulted with and so on, or was there a change in how the Navajo Nation was referred to in the bylaws?
I can answer that, Mr. Henneman. First, thank you for the question. The one that you have with red font throughout the document, those are the changes that are being inserted. With ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, it requires that there be tribal consultation. So that's why you can see Department of Education throughout the entire document. So that needed to be specified in there.
Okay. And then the second question on policy number 2, each section is called a policy, and procedure number 2.4, there's new language there, and I'm wondering where that language comes from, and I can explain why I'm asking. But there was a statement already about non-discrimination, and now there's a new one, and I'm wondering what the source of the new statement might be.
The new statement that's written in red font is consistent with the Office of Civil Rights regulations.
Well, that touches on why I always wonder when the feds are telling us what to do. Not just as a board or a district, but as a society and a country. So for some of us, sometimes the federal government gets heavy-handed. So I just wanted to know where that came from. Thank you.
Mr. Henneman, it's a requirement by law to post that in all of our documents. So.
I suspected as much.
Roll call?
Mr. Manini,
Yes.
Mr. Heeneman,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito.
Yes. Mr. Mitchell, you did have a motion. I don't know if you want to stand on that motion to go into executive session.
Yes, motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Manini?
Yes.
Ms. Jeff?
Yes.
Mr. Heineman?
May I ask for clarification? So what are we doing with item L?
Thank you. Thank you, board members, for completing the executive session. I would like to now ask for a motion to exit out. Thank you, Mr. Manini. Roll call.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Heineman?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
11-14.
Oh my goodness.
Madam President?
Yes.
At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve the interim superintendent contract addendum. Acting interim superintendent contract addendum, beginning December 20th, 2016 to June 30th, 2017.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, roll call, please.
Mr. Manini? Ms. Jeff?
Before I answer the question or the motion, I want to make sure that is in his contract there is a legal right for termination by an upcoming board if the new board decides to do so. So with that, I still am at ease, or not at ease with this contract, but I'll vote for yes with this, the wording as we went over, with this termination still in there.
Okay, Mr. Manini?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Jeff?
Before I also take a vote on this, I'd like to express my concerns that I had, and I'm very grateful and thankful that Mr. Hyatt and I had the opportunity to discuss the concerns, and I do really want to ensure that there is transparency and accountability. And so I do want to bring this out to let others know and employees know within the district that Mr. Hyatt is willing to go out and to listen to your concerns and to diligently work with you, because we want to make sure that that communication is there and that trust is there. And so I did have the opportunity to listen to District 2 as well as other employees within the district with all of your concerns, and I want to make that known. And I do want the newspapers to put that out there, to put that outreach out there, that, you know, that collaboration is there, and that there's an open door policy, and that the acting superintendent will make that initiative to work with the staff, with the employees, the teachers, and also the community members, and he's willing to do the outreach by attending the chapter meetings, which he already has with several of the school board members. And so I do want us to start all over, and I think that this is a good start, and so I do want to say yes, I support this. Thank you.
Mr. Heineman?
I likewise have a comment. this supplemental contract for acting superintendent is dated to run through June 30th, 2017. I do believe, that is the intent of the board, that contract run through its duration. The board has reserved a termination clause in it in case such would be seen as necessary and justified. But I believe that this district at this point needs continued stability. I think that Mr. Hyatt can provide that for the duration of this school year and contract, and once the board decides what to do from here on, that will become apparent in next meetings. But I do hope that contract runs through June, the end of June, for the sake of stability and continuity at this point for the rest of the year in our district, and I vote yes on the contract.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes, I am also in favor of this contract running till June 30th, and I would like just to comment that I appreciate the open communication that we have been receiving from Mr. Hyatt, and the collaboration, the transparency that we have been receiving as a board. So that would be my vote. Thank you. Now, I would like to...
Madam President? Madam President?
Okay, we did, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jeff, give me a second. We did discuss limited personnel matters on the contract for acting superintendent. We also received a personnel report by the acting superintendent. Just to make a report. Yes, Ms. Jeff?
Before we adjourn, I just want to also indicate that I need and I want to be on record on this because I know that there's individuals that are listening to this. I want clarification, not clarification, but I want to ensure that the Gallup Independent please put Crown Point instead of Albuquerque, because I am from Crown Point, and so I think you guys need to make those changes on your paper. So thank you. And I don't need that kind of an attitude.
Thank you. Can you motion to adjourn?
As senior board member, I make a motion to be adjourned.
Thank you, Joe. Roll call.
Ms. Jeff?
Yes.
Mr. Heineman?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.